Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy Release Party Thursday. I'm Olivia, and as always, I am so excited to be here with you all. Every month, I love getting the chance to have our engineering team come on here and talk about the features that they worked on in the most recent VS Code release. So we have a really great schedule lined up for you today. We have Matt, Joyce, and Rob on to talk about what they worked on this release and see some of those cool demos. So definitely let me know where you're watching from in the chat. I see Ahmad, you're in Syria, 6 p.m. Thanks so much for being with us over dinner time. Coder Nerd, I always love your dedication. I love seeing you in here 35 minutes early. You win for sure today. So drop where you're watching from, say hello in the chat. While y'all are doing that, I do want to also do a special plug today because on our channels, we are starting up a live stream for the summer. If you've seen our live streams before, if you're on any of our VS Code social media channels, Twitter, anything like that, then you know who Burke Holland is. And he is starting up a live stream this summer with John Galloway called Burke Learns Blazor. So that's actually going to be the very first one's going to be happening today in a little less than 2 hours. So at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Definitely tune into these channels. It's also going to be on the .NET channel and a couple of other ones as well, where you can watch Burke Learn Blazor. He's going to be working with John Galloway to basically port over an application he has. And they're going to be using Visual Studio, VS Code, Copilot, all that good stuff. So if you just want to come and hang out and watch someone learn Blazor, especially Burke, who is so fun to watch, definitely check that out. All right, I see we got a lot of people in the chat. Let's do some shout outs. Ooh, watching from Poland, nice, welcome. Hello from Canada. Russia, also 6 p.m. there. Thanks so much for tuning in. Wow, Germany, Philippines, Brazil, India. Wow, y'all are all over the place. France and Malaysia. Thanks so much for joining and being here today. We really appreciate it. We couldn't do any of this without y'all. And on that note, we like to kind of kick these release parties off with a thank you to our contributors. So at the bottom of every single release notes, there is always a thank you section. For those of you who may not know, but hopefully you all know, VS Code is an open source project. So we get a lot of community contributions, and we always want to make sure that we are taking the time to say thank you to everyone who has contributed. So I'm just going to do a quick scroll through. As always, it's always a long list, so I don't have the time to do individual shout outs for everyone. But if we just scroll through here, if you're watching and your name's on this list, thank you so much for being a part of this. We really, really appreciate all of your contributions to all the different repos, to issue tracking, and everything there. We could not do it without you. And thank you for being part of another awesome release. Okay, so with that, I know y'all are always excited just to get the engineers on, so let's go ahead and bring on our first guest, Matt. Hey,
hello.
Matt. How's it going?
Oh, going okay here.
Good. Thanks for coming back on. I know we had you on just last month too, so we're always excited to kind of see what you've been working on and see what demos you have for us.
Yeah, so I'm going to be demoing 2 different features, and hopefully both of them will speed up how you're going to work. So let's dive right in and start off with the linked editing feature for JavaScript and TypeScript. So if you're working with React or JSX in JavaScript or TypeScript, this is going to help speed up editing of the JSX components. So one of the more tedious tasks is, let's say that I want to change this paragraph element to something else, maybe a section tag. Now, normally I'd have to go in and type in both locations to update that. But now with linked editing, I can just place my cursor on the opening paragraph element. You'll see that it's turned this kind of reddish color here. And then I can just start typing. So I can say section. And you'll notice that the closing paragraph element has also just been automatically updated. And you can see that, again, it's highlighted in sort of this reddish color, which is telling us that linked editing is taking place. Now, the nice thing about this is that it just happened automatically. So I didn't have to go in and actually trigger anything. As soon as I just put my cursor on one of the opening or closing tags, it is going to automatically start updating the corresponding tag as well. So we could go in here, for example, and I could say H2. And then as soon as I go in, let's go back and edit this one again. And let's say we actually did want it to be a paragraph element instead. So I'll go and select it. I'll say paragraph. As soon as I press space to start typing the attributes, you notice that the linked editing stops. So it's not like we're going to start adding the attributes here. So I could say class name. And it's very easy to just go and update the opening tag and have the closing tag be updated as well. Now, this feature is very useful, and it's also supported for HTML files as well, but it is off by default just because we don't want to confuse people, and we really want to make sure that you understand that when you update things, it is going to update the closing tag as well. So to turn this on, all you have to do is go to your settings with either Control comma or Command comma if you want to use a keyboard shortcut, and you can search for linked editing. Now you can find the editor linked editing setting, and when you turn this on, it's going to enable the feature for JavaScript, TypeScript, and HTML, as well as any other feature or any other languages that support the linked editing feature. So it can be a really great time saver.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so you said it's off by default. You turn it on. What if, I know like sometimes I like features to be on sometimes, but not others. So if people want to use it and they're really into it, but don't want to use it all the time, is there a way to kind of toggle it almost?
So you have a few options. Like let's say that you like this feature in one language, but you don't like it in other languages. One of the options would be to enable the linked editing feature as a language specific setting. So you could go in, and I think we can do this in, let's see. So we could actually go to our settings JSON here, and we could do something like this where we create a language specific setting. So we could say JavaScript, and then say linked editing. So here we created a language specific setting, so it's only going to be on in JavaScript files. That would be one option. But you can also, let's go and turn this off. And let's say that you were wanting to rename the corresponding tags, but you don't want linked editing to be on. So with the current release of VS Code, all you have to do is press F2. And now it's going to start renaming those tags. So you can see it's a little bit of a different UI because we're using the normal rename operation. So you can go in and type section here. And now it's going to go and update the closing tag as well. So a slightly different flow there, but it does let you update the tags manually if you want to.
Awesome. Yeah. As Coder Nerd says, it's always nice to have options. I think that's always like one big feedback we get is like, okay, well, this is great, but sometimes I want it, sometimes I don't. So I love that there are kind of those options there for what you might want to do. You kind of touched on this. You said what files this supports, but someone did say, is this feature also available in other languages and frameworks like Rust or Svelte? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this feature is based on the language mode of the file, and it does require that you keep the normal built-in TypeScript extension enabled. So if you're in TypeScript JSX or JavaScript JSX, this feature is going to be enabled. If you're coming with a language like Vue, for example, where the language mode is actually going to be different, you'll need the Vue extension to add support for this feature. They can do that. This is a built-in feature of VS Code that other languages and extensions can support, but it's not going to work out of the box for those languages.
Gotcha. Good to know. There's a lot of people in the comments being like, they like this and it's one extension they don't need anymore because it's built into VS Code. So a lot of excitement there. Okay, cool. Yep. I know that there actually is also one question, I think probably just because you're the Markdown person. So you might end up touching on this, but someone said, I have a question on how to attach a link in a BMP image. Is that something that you could answer while you're here?
A link in a BMP image. I think you can create a link to a Markdown image, which I can actually kind of show off with the next feature here.
Cool, that would be great.
But I might be getting the question wrong. So let me actually go and switch windows. So let's take a look at the next feature, which is something that can, again, really save time when working with Markdown. So this feature is going to let you either drag and drop or copy and paste an image into a Markdown file to create a link. And this is something that we've had around for a while. So let me go over here and actually I'm going to drag this image from my desktop right over into VS Code. I can hold down Shift to then insert it. And you'll notice that it's inserted a Markdown link. What we added this iteration, though, is that when you do this, when you're dragging an image from outside of your workspace into your workspace, you'll actually copy that image file into your workspace as well. So you can see that here I'm in the top level README file, and that cat file has been added to my workspace just automatically by using the drag and drop operation. And I can also go over to my source control view and confirm that the cat file has also been added over here. Again, I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was just drag and drop. I could also copy paste to do the same thing. So I'm going to actually undo this. So I'll say undo here. All the changes will go away. And if I instead go and say copy paste up here, just refresh. Now I'm going to press paste. See that the cat file is also going to be added to the workspace again here. Now, this is a really great time saver, again, because I often would find myself either having to copy the file into the workspace and then copying and pasting it from my workspace into the current Markdown file, whereas this just lets you automatically combine everything into a single step. You don't have to think about moving the file into the workspace first, you can just copy and paste or drag and drop, and the file gets added.
That's awesome. Okay, so you said it gets added into your workspace. Can you configure where exactly it gets added in your workspace?
Yes, you can. So this is something we're actually using in our VS Code docs repo. So you can see that by default, it's going to be added next to the file. So we're in the README file here, so it's going to add the image next to it. But that's not always what you want. Sometimes you'll have a dedicated image directory. So let's go over to a separate file here. So this is our release notes, actually. And if I instead drag and drop over here, so again, I'll hold down Shift, you'll notice that it's getting inserted to a specific path. And we're able to configure where this is going to be inserted. So let's actually look at how you're going to do that. So in this case, it's gone to images and then under the release note name and then the file name finally. And if we look at the full path where we're inserting things, you can see down here, this is the new image that was inserted. Now, the way we're doing this is with a setting. So let me open up my settings here. And I'm going to go to the workspace specific settings. And I'm going to just open up the settings JSON to make this a little bit more obvious on what's going on. So there's a few settings that you can use to control this feature. The one that we want today is the Markdown copy files destination setting. So this is going to let you control when a file is copied into the workspace where it's going to be placed. And it's a map here of, a map of the Markdown, let's get rid of that, of the Markdown file name. So in this case, you can use a glob pattern to the destination, and you can use the special placeholders or special variables in here to also control where things are going. So let's actually look at the first one or the second one here, because this one's a little bit simpler. So this one is saying that for any file that is under the API directory in my workspace, it's going to put it into images and then the document base name, which if we look up at the documentation for this, you can see that the document base name, if the file is called README, would just be README. So you can really have a lot of control over where the images are going to be placed. And for this release notes ones, you can even get pretty fancy. So in the case here, we're saying that any file under release notes is going to go into the /release notes images directory. And then it's going to use the document base name again, but it's actually going to run a regular expression on that and transform the document base name using this. So in this case, it's going to remove the leading V and just make sure that the release notes is only using the version number without the leading V that the file name actually contains.
Oh,
so you can get some pretty fancy mapping going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And you also there's a separate setting that also lets you control whether or not the files will overwrite each other. So you can really control the experience with this, and it can be a great time saver. We're already using it in the VS Code docs repo, and it helped out with writing our release notes quite a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. We do have a couple of questions. So someone asked if this would work with sound effect files. So I guess audio files.
Yeah, it does. So let me see if I can actually find a screen recording or video here. So I'm actually going to go and show this with a video instead of an audio file because I don't have an audio file on hand. But if you go and drag a audio file or video file into the release notes, so I'll go over here. Oops, let me actually find the right one because I don't think we support move files. See if we can show this off. Or I'll just cheat and rename this to MP4. Okay, so now we can pretend that we have an MP4 file here that is going to show this off instead. So let's go and insert this. And you can see that it's inserted a video tag. And the same would work with MP3 files or other things. It would insert an audio tag. The same mapping is going to be used where it's going to use the mapping that we said for the file destination here. And it's just going to insert a video tag or an audio tag instead of inserting the Markdown image link.
That's awesome. There's a couple other questions. I think I lost them. But one, and this is good timing because we actually have Joyce coming on to talk about vscode.dev changes. But would this work in vscode.dev as well?
It does. That's actually one of the great use cases because uploading files to vscode.dev is a little bit of a pain. So now instead of having to think about uploading files and then creating a link to that file, you can just drag and drop that file into your VS Code dev instance and it'll be automatically uploaded. Or you can just copy and paste and the same will happen.
This is awesome. I feel like every time we have you on, like it just shows so many amazing things that Markdown's just even more seamless and even more integrated. Okay, so there's a couple other questions actually. What theme are you using?
This is just the standard dark modern theme.
Nice, a classic. And then someone else also asked somewhere up here, it's not directly related to what you just demoed, but I think you actually demoed it a couple of release parties ago. but they asked if you move the file that's being shown in the Markdown, if you move that, will update that link in the Markdown file as well.
Yeah, so let's actually do that. So let's go over to our cat file that we created and go find it up here. So we want images, and then we want all the way down here to this. And if we rename this file, so let's just say it's actually dog, you'll notice that here it is telling us that this file has changed. So there's actually a setting that we can use, and I didn't realize that I didn't have it on by default here. So there's a setting that we can turn on that will go and let us go and have the files be updated automatically. So it's like, I think it's called Markdown update. And there's something called update links on file move. And I don't know why it didn't kick in there. So we'll have to see. But yeah, not quite ready to show that one off. But this setting should let you go, and whenever the file is moved, it should update the links as well. So I'll have to look and see why it didn't pick up that instance where we renamed that file.
It's still a great call out though, because you still get that broken link indicator too. So you'll still have that to be like, okay, something was messed up here. So that always is super helpful too as a fallback, because you're like, okay, well, what's going on here? And it will tell you, okay, you have a broken link, so you can really easily investigate that. Cool.
Yep.
All right, Matt. Well, it's always a pleasure having you on. Everyone in the chat is so excited. Alessandro says Markdown with steroids. I agree. Always amazing updates. I'm sure we will have you back on very soon as well. Is there anything else you kind of want to talk about before we say goodbye?
No, I think that those are really the highlights. Yeah, there's a lot of other great Markdown features and JavaScript and TypeScript features that we've been adding. So definitely check out the release notes for more information on those.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks.
All right. And that's going to bring us to our next guest, Joyce. Hey, Joyce. Oh, you're muted. Classic. Almost. Not quite. Still muted. Let's see if we can. It might be in the studio. Let's see if we can force unmute you. Let's try one more time. It might be stuck in a mute. I wish I could read lips.
All right.
There we go. Loud and clear.
Fantastic. Apologies for that. And,
no worries. Very relatable.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back on here.
Of course, it's always a joy.
I'm a software engineer in the VS Code team, and today I'm going to be showing off how you can create and share links directly from inside VS Code. Awesome. So to start us off here, I'd actually like to switch over to the browser. And so for those of you who work on GitHub repositories in your day-to-day work, you're probably familiar, you're a power user especially, that you can deep link to specific lines of code from the file view on github.com. So here I can click on a line and I can go in here and say copy permalink, and that is going to generate a line, a link specifically to that line, which I can then, put into issues or share with a coworker. And that's really great when I want to be able to just share code pointers really quickly and easily and have someone go directly to what I am looking at. What I wanted to share is that in the last couple of releases, we've added the ability to get to these links from directly inside VS Code. So here, let's go over to my VS Code install on VS Code desktop. And as you can see here, I am currently looking at the same file I was looking at earlier. And so here I'm going to select this range that I would like to share with someone. And I'm going to right click on the editor gutter line. And you'll see here that I have a few options to copy a GitHub permalink. Copy permalink as Markdown, copy head link. There's also VS Code dev link, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But I'm going to go ahead and select copy GitHub permalink. And then I'm going to switch back to my browser and paste that in. And waiting a bit, you'll see that we get taken directly to that range that we were just looking at in VS Code. So this is really handy for me. I use this every single day because it just makes it really easy to collaborate on code with your coworkers and save off pointers to various areas of code that are relevant for later. You can also put these links into GitHub issue comments or even pull request descriptions, and those get rendered really nicely inline. So that's a feature that I love and use quite often.
Yeah,
and
that's
now you
awesome.
can get to those directly from inside your editor gutter. And another feature that I mentioned earlier, copy vscode.dev link. For those of you who haven't heard of vscode.dev before, that is VS Code running in your browser. And we have full support for GitHub repositories, viewing, editing, and even committing to GitHub repositories from directly inside your browser. Because it's your browser, it works anywhere, not just on a device where you can install VS Code, for example. It works on your phone. And so here I'm going to go ahead and copy a VS Code dev link and then switch back to my browser and paste that link in. And so you'll see here that it's slightly different than the link that we saw earlier. It starts with a vscode.dev/GitHub, and then the rest of it is pretty much the same. So I hit enter here. What this is going to do is it's going to open up a lightweight copy of the VS Code repo. And it's also going to open a deep link directly into the file that I was just looking at. So right here, and you'll see it's pretty much exactly what we just saw in VS Code Desktop. Yeah, so this is really helpful because unlike GitHub.com, this experience is not read-only. So for example, I can go ahead and make edits here and hit save. And then if I wanted to later on, I could even use the source control view and create a new branch, commit that into a new change set, and create a pull request from here. So that's the first thing I wanted to show off.
So just a quick question. So if people are making these edits and maybe they don't want to check into source control yet, and they close out of the browser tab, what happens to their changes?
Yeah, so these changes are actually saved in local browser storage, which means that if you close and reopen this tab here, or if you refresh this tab, say, let's just go ahead and do that. Typically with browser-based applications, your changes are not persisted, but in the case of vscode.dev, they actually are. And so you'll see right here that my changes are exactly where I left them. And so, if I accidentally close my browser, I have a little bit more confidence that my work isn't just going to disappear on me.
That's so good. Someone said, Coder Nerd said, VS Code in the browser saved my butt when I had to make an edit fast while in the supermarket.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And there's so many other ways that vscode.dev can be really helpful in your day-to-day workflow. So I'll briefly talk about some more of those. One of the changes that we added in this past release is that you can now check out branches directly from VS Code on the desktop in your browser. So for example, here, what I did was just click on the branch picker in my desktop clone of the VS Code repo. And you'll see here that in the branch picker, we now have the ability to open that branch on GitHub or on vscode.dev. And so if I go ahead and click checkout on vscode.dev here, that takes me directly to that branch on vscode.dev. And this is really handy if, for example, I want to be able to check out multiple versions of the same repo simultaneously and even work on multiple branches simultaneously. All of your working changes are actually isolated to each branch in vscode.dev, which basically gives you superpowers because you have multiple workspaces going at the same time for the same repo, and you don't have to maintain that repo at multiple clones of that repo. For example, on VS Code Desktop, you're automatically on the latest version of your changes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so one more thing that I will quickly share here is that this is also, as you might imagine, one common use case for creating branches is to be able to create pull requests. And one thing that I run into all the time is that I'll have created a pull request for somebody, I'll have sent it off for review, and then I'll come back to desktop and I'll start working on something else. And I have a bunch of changes going here, for example, and then I see that, for example, here I've got a pull request open and someone actually requested changes on my pull request. So ordinarily, I would have to check out that pull request branch, stash whatever I was working on locally in desktop. And now instead, what I can do is just right-click on this. This is the GitHub pull requests view that I'm showing here in the sidebar, and select Checkout Pull Request on vscode.dev. And what that is going to do is it's going to open that pull request in vscode.dev. we have a full GitHub pull request integration in vscode.dev as well. And that means that I can view my pull request description. I can look at any comments that have come in, and I can resolve those comments directly from inside vscode.dev without having to lose the local context that I was just working on. So you'll see here that I've got my pull request view that's coming in. Here's a diff view for one of the files that changed. And I'm going to open the terminal area here and look for the comments. So I can jump directly to a comment here. And you can see that someone's left a comment. Alex on my team has provided me some feedback, and I can go ahead and actually resolve those comments directly in vscode.dev as well. So in this particular case, I've got a comment. It's a little further down in the file, I think, with margin widget. Yep. So I've already made that update. And so I can go back into here and just mark that conversation as resolved. So again, really nice way for being able to make quick edits to pull requests. It goes without saying that, of course, you can also review your coworkers' pull requests directly in a VS Code environment with all of your favorite key bindings and customizations without having to lose your local checkout. So this is really just a great companion to your local workflow, in addition, of course, to being able to make changes on the go from your mobile phone.
Absolutely. Could you zoom in just like 2 notches just so people can see a little better what this whole experience looks like? But yeah, I think this is so cool. Absolutely. I think a lot of people don't, that looks good. I think a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to review PRs in VS Code in general and vscode.dev. Like it is so seamless and it's so much easier, in my opinion, to do that. I know a lot of people still like go in the browser and they're just like on the actual repo and reviewing it there. It's so much easier if you can actually see it in where you're actually already developing. There was one question. Okay, so I think this is kind of going back to when we were talking earlier about, okay, if you close a browser, what happens to your changes? They said, so if you're incognito, are the changes lost?
Yes, they would be lost if you had an incognito session and then went away, because those changes are ultimately just stored in IndexedDB. And I'm not sure that's persisted in incognito specifically.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. That's very good to know. And then while people are kind of in vscode.dev, if they run into any limitations while editing, what happens?
Yeah, so we offer you a really easy way to switch over to a full-blown code space. So vscode.dev is a lightweight serverless version of VS Code. What that means is that, for example, unlike a GitHub code space, there is no virtual machine that's running on the other side. Everything that you're seeing here, this like file system that's created for you, is entirely virtual and it's running directly inside your browser. So that means that, for example, for now, you cannot yet run and debug code in vscode.dev. And so if you wanted to build a change that you're making to a pull request before you actually commit it back to github.com, one thing that you can do is, say, go into the terminal area here and click on this continue working in GitHub Codespaces button. What this is going to do is it is going to give you the ability to reopen the same pull request or branch that you were looking at inside a code space. So fetching available machine types here. And so if I select this, what that's going to do is it's going to take me to a code space for this repo. And that will just open up directly in my browser. And once this code space fully resolves, I will be able to continue working on the changes that I just had. So we offer a really seamless upgrade to a full-blown code space. If you do run into issues with vscode.dev, at the same point in time, we do expect that for really simple edits, you are not going to need to switch over to a code space.
Right. Like if you're in the supermarket and just need to do something really quick.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. And I love kind of going through that story arc, right? You can start, you can be in VS Code desktop, copy a link, go into vscode.dev. Okay, now I need to run it. Let's open a code space. It's a really great story there. Cool.
Absolutely.
All right, Joyce. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to show us or chat about for what's on the roadmap?
No, those are kind of the highlights. Thanks for being here and for watching.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joyce. I'm sure we'll see you on these again in the future.
Absolutely.
All right. And so that's going to bring us to our last and final guest, Rob. Hey, Rob.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Good. Before we dive into your demo, we had a couple questions of people being like, where do I actually find these release notes? So I just want to address that real quick. You can go to aka.ms/vscode-release, and that's going to be a link that we'll send you there. We'll also make sure it's in the description of this video. But we always have the release notes published on our Visual Studio Code website, so you can see and read about everything, the things that you see today. But there's also so much more in the releases than just what's shown in the release party. All right. Sorry, Rob. Didn't mean to cut into your time.
No problem at all.
All right. So what do you have for us today?
Yeah, so I'm just here to talk about some of the things we've been working on with our Copilot Chat and other AI integrations into VS Code.
Awesome. I know people are going to be excited to see those.
Yeah, and before we get into it, I have one other thing to mention, which is less of a demo, more of just an announcement. So, every time we've talked about this so far, we've been asking everyone to use VS Code Insiders and the nightly version of the Copilot extension. But as of our latest stable release, now you can actually use Copilot Chat in stable VS Code as well. Ooh. So we love and appreciate everyone who uses VS Code Insiders. And if you decide to keep using VS Code Insiders, then that is great too. That is a good decision. But if you prefer to use the stable version of VS Code, then you can do that, and you can still use Copilot Chat.
Awesome.
Cool. So as changes we've been making from the last release. So the first thing I want to talk about is just sort of better integration with the in-editor chat experience with notebooks, right? And so basically, I'm going to pull up this really, really simple notebook here, and I'm just reading some data out of a CSV file. I'm loading that into a data frame. You can see it just has some basic information about my best friends and their names and ages. And I can pull up our Copilot in-editor chat experience with Command-I. And this brings up this prompt where I can, if you didn't see when I showed this off last time, I can type in a prompt and ask Copilot to generate some code based off that for me. And what's changed is that, even though these individual code cells are sort of like separate editors, when I put in a prompt here, it's actually going to have full context of all of the other cells in my notebook. Ooh. And so I can ask something like this. And, even though I am just saying, plot the data frame, and there's nothing else in this one editor here, it does have like context of this cell. And so it knows that I loaded a data frame that's named DF. And so I got this. What I really want is more of like a bar graph though. So I can, sorry, I'm scrolling around a bit, make this a little more specific. Cool, let's see what that looks like.
And someone asked, what's the shortcut to get the inline suggestions? Can you repeat that?
Yeah, on Mac, that's Command-I. On Windows and Linux, I'm thinking Control-I. I might be off on that one. I think that's it.
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a little more what I had in mind. I would really like it to be able to label the axes, though, with the names. Let's see if I can get it to do that.
This is awesome. I love seeing the iterative nature of it.
Yeah, so now it knows to pull in PyPlot, and it's able to, it gave me the name and age labels on the axes, although it hasn't plugged in the names yet. That's all right. I forgot to give my little disclaimer before I jumped into the demos, which is just that, when we're working with these AI models, like there's a degree of randomness here, right? Mm-hmm. And so we never know exactly what we're going to get out. Another thing I would have liked to have seen was here, which, now the Copilot inline suggestion knows what I want at least, so I can do that. and also run this. And now we have our names here too.
And I feel like that's such a good call out too, because I think we say this every time we talk about Copilot in these live streams, is that Copilot is called Copilot for a reason, right? Like Rob, we just saw, he's like, okay, let's get at this, kind of nudging it, but then he still made changes there because he knows what he wants. And Copilot's just kind of helping, like, okay, this is probably the syntax you want. Is this what you're thinking? And then you do still kind of have that control over it. So I think it's always a good call out there.
Exactly. And I'll mention one more thing about what this inline suggestion widget is doing, which is, so I pulled this up, and if I ask it something else, like, like this. So, so in this case, now we're getting a full kind of diff view. And I put this in the wrong place. It needs to go down one. But a cool aspect of this, though, is that it's putting, it's showing me what changes it made with the diff view. But also, as soon as it makes those changes, this code is actually in the actual cell editor, right? And so before I've even sort of gotten out of this experience, you saw I can run the cell and experiment with it to see if it actually works. And if it doesn't, then I can change my query and I can try again. And since it's putting those changes directly in the code editor, then they're live and I can actually run them. Or if there's a compile error, here I think Pyland's jumped in and said, oh, we don't know what PLT is yet. I can see the red squiggles in there immediately, and that really helps me validate whether Copilot is giving me suggestions that are actually accurate or not.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I know one of the main questions we always get anytime we do anything Copilot is, what does Copilot actually know about? So as you're showing this with data, does Copilot know what data is in your data frame?
That's a good question. Right now, it doesn't actually know, like, what is the shape of the actual variables? Like, what data do I actually have in these variables? That's some context that I think we could provide, and would really like to sort of expand its capabilities by giving it that context. Right now, it only knows what code I actually have in this notebook, right? So it knows that there is a data frame. It's called df. It just kind of knows that it's a data frame because it knows what this function does, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it will, if you're using this data frame in different ways, that's kind of why I gave these little cues here. It might be able to sort of infer what the shape of your data is based on how you're using it, right? So if you can look at this code and see, okay, I know that there's name and age columns, but we're not actually giving it sort of that live data.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I think that kind of ties into this one question that Brett had. What if your data frame has more than 2 columns? Will you have to specify, or will it randomly pick 2? It sounds like it's basically going to infer from whatever you've done in the surrounding code cells.
Yeah, it's going to try to figure out what I mean, and it might just sort of decide randomly, or I can make my prompt a little more specific and tell it exactly what I'm looking for.
Okay, awesome. I love seeing this brought into notebooks. I know we have a lot of notebook users who tune into these live streams, so that's great.
Yeah, let me see if was there something else I was supposed to mention about notebooks. Yes, one more really cool feature. So let's say I ran this, and let's say I didn't get the result I was looking for. Like, maybe it's put in a different column here, and this doesn't actually exist, right? So I'm going to run this, and I'm going to get this error. And I'm not like a pro Jupyter user. I've kind of figured out my way around a little bit, but I still find these stack traces a little difficult to parse sometimes. So there's a lot going on in here. But we've actually added this button that will let you try to fix this error using Copilot. And so when you run the cell and you get an error, then this little magic icon is going to show up. So it's fix using Copilot.
Ooh.
And I can click this. And here we sort of parsed this error message and pulled out the error and plugged that into Copilot, and we said /fix. And Copilot sort of figured out what to do about that error. And so here's a case where it actually did sort of successfully figure out what the shape of my data is, right? And so it knows that there is actually an age that is more appropriate to plug in here, and there's no height. So we can accept that and get back to a working state.
That's awesome. I love that it's a magic icon, because I feel like that sums up my experience with Copilot. Just magically fix it, please.
Exactly. Magic sparkles. That's kind of how it feels sometimes. Or another example, if I just have something basic like maybe I forgot a parenthesis here, it says invalid syntax. Let's see if we get this one. Yeah, it added the parentheses and even kind of told me what it did. So that's kind of nice. There we go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a lot of other Copilot chat features to demo. So keep dropping your questions in the chat, everyone, and I'll try to get to as many as we can.
Yeah, so next thing I want to show off is, so we have this good support for reviewing pull requests in VS Code. And I've kind of hooked that up to Copilot also. And where I'm trying to go. So this file is part of my pull request. And so here I have I've submitted this pull request, and I have this one file that I've added. And someone else, let's pretend that's not just my name, but suppose someone left a comment on this PR, right? And so this is what this UX kind of looks like. And maybe they left a comment that wasn't all that helpful. It doesn't even have that much context. But we've actually added the same sort of auto fix with Copilot button to comments. And what this will actually do is when I click this, it's going to pull up that same inline chat editor and just plug in that comment, and we'll see if that has enough for Copilot to know what to do. And so here, yeah, it just based off this kind of vague hint that there's like something wrong with the condition on the for loop, we see, I was trying to loop in this array in reverse order, but it started in the wrong place. The condition was wrong. And so we can, get this nice inline diff that kind of tells us what Copilot changed. And if that's what I want, I can just accept that and, commit that and update my PR if I want.
That's so cool. Cause I feel like y'all, this is really awesome. Cause you're just like, this loop isn't right. Like that's all the comment said. It's not like, oh, the conditions are wrong, it's ending incorrectly, anything like that. It's just like, this isn't right. And Copilot's like, oh, I can handle this. I think that is so cool.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's fun to try to figure out, how little can I give it, and it still gives me the right answer. And sometimes it's a little mind blowing. It's like it's reading your mind.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So another thing that is that's new that we've been experimenting with is what we're calling sort of the quick question UI. And so this is actually behind a setting. Maybe we can put this in the description later or something, or here, I'll just show it on screen, maybe. So the setting is like this. If I hit. Sorry. So, okay, if you plug in this setting, then you'll be able to enable this feature. And so what the quick question experience is I'm going to hit Command-Shift-I. That's the key binding on Mac. I think it's maybe Control-Shift-I on Windows and Linux. And this actually pulls up what looks like sort of our normal panel chat experience, like this. But we're doing it in just sort of a quick pick dialog. And I can ask a question here and it's going to answer. And what I find this really useful for is just these sort of like one-off questions where I want to do a quick reference, but I don't necessarily want to get into a full like back and forth panel chat experience. Right. And so I often use this for things that I would just kind of Google and where I know it's going to be, just a one-off.
Right. Like a more lightweight sort of inquiry.
Okay. Exactly. And so, for example, I could say something like this, and maybe this is something I would normally Google, and I'm just going to end up on the MDN page or on a Stack Overflow post or something. But I know I can get a really quick response here. And yeah, this points out the transform property. I can never remember exactly how I'd use this or what the syntax is. But if I wanted to, I could grab this, and this button would copy the code block, and then I can paste that into my CSS like that.
Nice.
And
yeah, what if you do want to, like, you start doing this, like, okay, I do want this to be a full-blown conversation. Is there a way to kind of move from the question to the chat panel?
Yeah, exactly. So we have this button here, which is sort of lets you continue this conversation in the chat view. So I can click this, and it's going to open the panel and just put it in here. And then I can keep asking questions, having this as context. So I could say, yeah, so you can use all sorts of units in here, and you can do that and continue my conversation.
Awesome. There's a lot of love for this. This is an awesome feature, nice feature, love it. Just gets better and better. Mark says, I've been using Copilot for so long now, it's still like magic to me. I agree. Like, I feel like every time there's something new, it still just blows my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another aspect of this is that since it's kind of like a reference, so if I ask a question in here, like, this, so I need another CSS example, and maybe I close this, then I'm typing for a little bit, but then if I open it again within, I think the timeout is like 30 seconds or somewhere around there. If I open it again, it didn't clear my state, right? I'm able to see the same the same question and the same response here, right? And so this kind of lets me just pull it up quickly again if I need to like reference the previous response, or if I want to just tweak this and ask a different question. But then if I come back a minute later or 2 minutes later, then it's going to be cleared out and I'll have a fresh.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Mark summarized it well. Really nice to be able to stay in the context of the code editor like this. It really keeps the flow going.
Yeah, good. That's a great description of it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Okay, so another thing that's new that's kind of cool is we have the ability to delete messages out of your chat history. And so what I mean by that is we have this X button, and when I click this, it's going to delete this request and the response that's associated with it. And like that. And do it again like this. And so the question is kind of like, why would you want to do that? And I think the main reason is, so sometimes you are in this long conversation going back and forth, and maybe Copilot gets off track a little bit, and you find that you're having to tweak your question and ask it in a different way and try to push it back to the actual topic that you're really trying to ask about. And when you do that, then since the Copilot chat is taking the whole history of your conversation as part of its context, it might be a little bit easier to keep it on track if you can just go and delete any messages that are, that are irrelevant, that you're not actually trying to ask about. Right.
Gotcha. So it's not just like it deletes it from your view. It basically deletes it from the context. So it's almost like a reset. Like, okay, sorry, I started leading you astray there. Let's get back to where we were headed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you just, tell Copilot, forget we even got onto that subject. I don't want to talk about that subject anymore. Let's stay on track here. We're talking about CSS.
Yeah.
Then you can do that. And, we only have sort of a limited amount of context that we are able to send into Copilot, so especially if it comes back with some response that's irrelevant and is also really long, right? That's actually going to burn a lot of the budget that you have for your context, for the messages that we're sending to Copilot. And so, you want to use that efficiently. So we have more space for important context, like, the file that you have open and things like that. And so you might want to clean that up a little bit just to make sure that you're using your context budget efficiently.
Awesome. Okay. We're coming up on like the last 10-ish minutes just as a time check. So
okay.
Try to squeeze as much in as possible. There's so much good stuff. I feel like we could do this for like literally hours.
Yeah, we've got a few. I'll go through them quickly. So another feature that we have is the ability to move your chat session from the sidebar into the editor area. And so we have this command, which is under the ... menu here, open session in editor. And you can click that, and it's going to pull it up over here. And so some people like this because you sort of get a wider view. It takes the whole space. Some people keep the activity bar closed and want to make sure that the chat is visible. And you can sort of pull it up, and you can also, set up whatever split editor kind of experience you want here. And so you can have chat on this side and editor down here, or you can split them the other direction, and have your chat in here, whatever you want to do. So you can there's also in the same place to focus this to move this back, open session sidebar like that.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the stream, is that's always nice to have options. And I feel like that's kind of what we're always trying to do, right? Like give you amazing tools and then let you customize it in a way that works with your flow.
Exactly. Everybody has their own opinions and their own styles of how they want to work. And, we want to do the best we can to sort of support everybody's workflow and make them comfortable.
Absolutely.
So another thing we've got is a chat history. And so a lot of people have asked for this on our public Copilot issue repo. And so pretty excited to make this available. But we've got this button here. It says show history. And when I click this, it's going to show me all of, each of these is like a full chat session. And the title of the session is we're just showing you the text of the first message that you asked, right? So if I click this, rotate an image in CSS, it's going to pull up this session in an editor, and then I can just continue the conversation where I left off.
That's cool. And so then that also we can see has that deleted message that you deleted in the panel is also deleted in that session history. So it kind of persists with whatever you saw.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's also, I feel like if y'all have, when ChatGPT came out, if y'all have been using that, that's kind of the same sort of interface they're used to, where it does save in. It's kind of like that first, query that you added is going to be the name of it. So I think that that's a really good seamless of showing how that we're kind of abiding by that same interface.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, and you can also manage these, and you can, delete entries here if you want. And yeah, these are also saved per workspace. So, these are kind of associated with this folder that I've opened. And if I then go open a different folder, we're kind of assuming that you were asking about something that you're working on when you have that folder open. And so then I would see, I open a different folder, I'll see a different set of conversations that I started with that folder open.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And what kind of when will the session end? Is it when you close the browser? Or not the browser, the editor.
Yeah, I mean, they never really end, because you can always just sort of pick them up and continue. I mean, I guess I would say if I have this session going and then I click the clear button, that's one time when now that session is going to show up at the top of my history list.
Gotcha.
And cool. if I open it and I click this, then that same session is not in here anymore, because I sort of only want to open one instance of it. But if I close it, then it'll show up again.
Awesome. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
There's one just kind of general Copilot question. Does it matter if I mention the programming language last or first in the question? So if I say, how do I rotate an image in CSS versus in CSS, how do I rotate an image? Does that matter the order that you phrase your question in?
I mean, it's up to sort of a quirk of the model and how you write your prompt. In some cases you might see a difference, and in some cases you might not see a difference. And I wouldn't say there's a general rule, but like I said before, there's always sort of an element of randomness in what the sort of results you get out of the model. And I mean, if you're not quite getting what you expect when you try it one way, you might try it the other way and get something totally different. So it can be a little, that randomness can show up there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely try it out. See if there's one way that works better, or if it ends up in the same place.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Just a couple more things that I can get through quickly if we got time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can always go a little bit over too. So no worries.
Okay, cool. So another feature we have, so if I start the session here, and I'll say, what is the stack? Different. And okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. And so we've got these two commands, export session and import session. And so I can go and run chat export session. And this is going to grab whatever chat session is open, and I can basically export this session to a JSON file. And so it just had me pick a name for the file, and if I open just the file, just a normal JSON file, it kind of has the content you would expect, right? It's just a list of all the messages that were in this session, basically. But if I and wanting to save that session and send it to a friend, or I can even check it into my repo for my workspace so other people can see it, and then they can see that JSON file, and they can run the import session command, import session, and that error message. But then they can pull up that same conversation, and again they can just continue working on that conversation with the same context of the chat history.
So then if they do decide to kind of continue this conversation, do those new additions to the conversation get saved back to that exported file? How does that work?
So the new messages, if I ask another question, this isn't going to get written to that file automatically. That file is kind of just its own static, copy of the conversation. Okay. If I want to, basically edit this and save it again, I'm going to have to export it again. Okay. Right? So with my new question, I can go back to here and say export session, and then I can overwrite that file if I want to, or write a new one. But this isn't like a dirty editor where I just save my changes and it goes into the file automatically.
Okay, that makes sense. someone does have, again, another kind of general Copilot question. Love the product and team. We love you guys. Okay, one question. Is there any way to adjust the streaming speed? Sometimes it feels like Copilot is vomiting in my terminal. I love the colorful description.
I relate to that, honestly. I mean, this is something that's bugged me and that I'm actually actively working on, which is just that, it's typing in text so fast and it will kind of be scrolling at the same time. So it's sometimes it's just like dumping paragraphs of text into here, and like I can't read while it's scrolling and doing all this stuff, right? And so we've experimented a little bit with some different ways to sort of represent the way this answer comes in, right? Like, for example, if I could ask my question and then we would sort of scroll up to here and then start, streaming in the response, but you would not be scrolling at the same time that the response is coming in. Right? I think that would make it a lot easier to read.
Cool. Yeah, we love that feedback.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get something like that, and maybe that will help.
And then for everyone watching, I know we've had a couple questions that are like, how do I get this? Is this available right away? At the end of Rob's demo, I'll go ahead and let him kind of answer how you can get Copilot Chat and that stuff. But we'll wait till the end. I'm not ignoring your questions, I promise.
Yeah, and then so last new feature. So we've just been working on adding some key bindings and sort of making this a little more keyboard accessible and easier to get around with quick keyboard shortcuts rather than having to use the mouse for everything. One thing we've added is just a key binding just to focus this view really quickly, right? And so on Mac, that is Control-Command-I, and I believe on Windows and Linux, that's Control-Alt-I. And so that's just a quick way to pull up the view wherever it is and put your cursor right in the chat box. You can start typing right away. I've also got Control-L to clear my chat session, so I can sort of get a nice fresh context really quickly. And something else we've been working on is so if you get a response that has code blocks in it. So an example would be so here's an example with a couple of code blocks. Make this smaller. I'd like to have two that fit on the window. Okay, there we go. So I have a key binding F9, and this moves the cursor between the two code blocks. And that just makes it easy if I want to do something with these, like copy part of them or do something else.
Nice.
I can sort of just jump up there directly from this input box and take action on them. So I could copy this and put them in my editor easily. We've also got it set up so that if I just jump up here and I don't have any selection and I press Command-C to copy, then it's actually going to copy the entire code block. And so that also makes it an easy way to just grab this code and put it in just the right spot in my editor.
Nice.
And another cool feature is if I have a command that I want to run in the terminal, it's a really simple one, I guess, but I have a key binding for this too, which is Control-Enter on Mac, and I think Control-Alt-Enter on Windows and Linux. And so if I hit Control-Enter, it's going to automatically bring up the terminal, and it put this code in, and then I can just hit Enter to actually run it.
Oh, that's so nice.
We don't want to automatically run that for you too quickly. We're going to make you review it for just a second and think before you hit Enter. But
yeah, that's for the best.
Be careful before you run any AI generated commands, and
right.
Just maybe do a little sanity check. But you can do that, and that's I'm not very good at complicated bash commands, and so this is actually something that I use pretty often personally.
And these key bindings, they're there by default, right? You didn't configure anything to get those key bindings to work.
Exactly. This is all the default built-in stuff right now.
Awesome. Okay, we have a lot of love, saying so many great features. The typical, what theme are you using?
Yeah, this is actually just our dark modern theme, which is built in. And so, our default theme for a long time has been Dark Plus. This is what's probably familiar to you. And Dark Modern is our attempt to sort of, just give this little refresh and a facelift. And I think this might currently be the default theme in Insiders. I guess I'm not sure off the top of my head, but this is one I've been using for fix. I really like it.
All right. So on that note, I know I mentioned I'd give you a chance at the end. Can you just kind of go over a quick, how do people get access to Copilot Chat? Once they have access, will all these features be made available to them? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've still got a waitlist, and you can join that. Do we have the link handy to show, or maybe we can include that in the video?
It'll definitely be in the description. Yeah, I know we had it from last one.
Yeah, and so yeah, join the waitlist. We are taking people off the waitlist, even if it feels like you've been on there for a while. I promise, your turn will come up. And once you do that, then like I said, all you have to do is install the Copilot Nightly extension. You can use that on VS Code stable though, and then you'll get our chat features, and you'll have this window show up, and all the other features that I mentioned will sort of automatically light up once you're signed into GitHub.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, we'll definitely make sure that a link to that waitlist is included in the description. So if you are not already on it, you can go ahead and join and get one step closer to getting access to these awesome features. Okay, there we go. It's on the screen, aka.ms/getcopilot. All right, Rob. Well, that was a lot. So many amazing features. Are there any other things you want to show or just talk about with the future of Copilot?
Yeah, we've been busy, and we're still busy. So we've got a lot of stuff we're working on, and yeah, I can come back next month and dump a whole another set of features on you probably.
Yeah, I think people will definitely like that.
Yeah, great.
We love seeing these updates. Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for coming on. I love seeing this stuff. I feel like my mind gets blown every single time, and like even if I use it every day, I'm like, oh my gosh, how is this possible? So thank you, and I'm sure we'll see you on probably as soon as next month to get even more updates.
Great, thanks for having me. It's always a lot of fun to be here.
Of course, anytime.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so with that brings us to the end of our release party. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Always so much fun. I love getting the chance to see firsthand from the engineers all the great features that were added in the most recent release. As we mentioned, you can check out the release notes for more of what's new. And then also just make sure to follow us on YouTube and TikTok. If you're watching on YouTube right now, make sure to subscribe. And we'll post long form videos as well as shorts like the release highlights shorts. So we also will post just a quick 60 seconds where you can see some of the highlights from this release. And we'll cross post those on our TikTok channel as well. And one more final plug before I say goodbye to you today. In little less than an hour, about 1 hour, come back to these channels and tune into the Burke Learns Blazor live stream. It is going to be going on all summer. Today is the very first one. It's going to be so much fun. If you know Burke, you know it's going to be a party. So if you didn't party enough in this release party, don't worry. In 1 hour, you can do it again with Burke while he learns Blazor. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care, and we will see you next month for another release party.